first time that I actually like fully went for something was like I had this idea to like go to Paris and like propose. And at the time I had like no job, like no ring, no money. My wife didn't have a passport, my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, I'm gonna like write a journal and I'm gonna commit like 70 days. And even on the 70th day, if I have nothing, I'm still gonna go in. And I remember even on like one of the last days, like her passport still hadn't came in. Like I didn't have the money for my rent. I had like an eviction letter. I had like it was like a mess. But like on like the last day, somehow like I remember like the last day, I never checked my mail. I checked my mail and I had like a letter from like the IRS from like a back pay of some weird thing that allowed me to pay
Yeah.
everything. So that pretty much showed me like, man, if I have like extreme faith in God and I'm actually committing to something and I follow through, like I can pretty much achieve like anything.
Hello and welcome to User Spotlights. I'm Laura with ClickFunnels, and today I'm joined by Dee Greene. Dee is an entrepreneur, digital nomad, and a man of faith helping coaches, consultants, and experts use YouTube to get clients, but he also has a really cool story about how he got involved with this and overcame limiting beliefs. So Dee, I'm so excited to talk to you about some things today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on.
So tell me a little bit. I know, and we talked briefly before we hit record on this video, and you had a lot of really cool things to share about how you got started in ClickFunnels and 2CCX and all of this stuff that you're doing for your business. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a background?
Yeah, I guess like the short version is like whenever I met my wife back in 2013, we were working at Disney together, like doing valet. And I remember after like I think it was like a week or two running after those cars and seeing people come in to Disney from all these other countries, I was like, I'm not doing this like forever. Like everyone else is like, no disrespect, but they're like 40, 50, like still working there. It's like their job they've had for like 20 years. They don't like it. They have like one day out of the week to where they can enjoy themselves. And I was like, I gotta like do something different. So I just started like taking little risks at a time. Like, okay, I'm gonna try to go do this job, or I'm gonna get on LinkedIn and da 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 da. So like over the years, when you get to the point of if you're gonna do something online, you especially back then, like around 2015 or something like that, you're gonna come across like Russell Brunson.com secrets, expert secrets, all this type of stuff. Yeah, I just started getting really involved in like what can I actually do to change my life? And the first time that I actually like fully went for something was like I had this idea to like go to Paris and like propose. And at the time I had like no job, like no ring, no money. My wife didn't have a passport, my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, I'm gonna like write a journal and I'm gonna commit like 70 days. And even on the 70th day, if I have nothing, I'm still gonna go for it. And so it was like one of the most challenging, probably the hardest thing I had ever done up to that point. And I remember even on like one of the last days, like her passport still hadn't came in. Like I didn't have the money for my rent. I had like an eviction letter. I had like, it was like a mess. But like on like the last day, somehow like I remember like the last day, I never checked my mail. I checked my mail and I had like a letter from like the IRS from like a back pay of some weird thing that allowed me to pay
Yeah.
everything. So that pretty much showed me like, man, if I have like extreme faith in God and I'm actually committing to something and I follow through, like I can pretty much achieve like anything. So when it came to fast forward to 2020, during the pandemic, I was doing like a podcast like this, and somebody's like, "Yo, you need to like check out this guy Dan Henry." So I had invested like $10,000 of money like that I didn't have in his program at the time, and that was just like a huge leap of faith because like during COVID, like I
Oh
didn't have the
yeah.
money. I didn't like all it was like the worst time possible. So before that, up until that point, I had been reading like expert secrets.com secrets, trying to like do it myself. I remember I had this I had moved to downtown Orlando. And I used to take this there was like a whiteboard, it was like a portable one. So it was
Yeah.
like a one I could just carry around. And I remember I used to take that and expert secrets like everywhere. I would go to like Jimmy John's or whatever. And I was just trying to figure out like, okay, what's the red ocean, the blue ocean, what's my big domino, all this type of stuff. And it was just hard like figuring it out by myself. So when I invested in Dan Henry, obviously he had like the framework. So I started, oh, this is how I need to use ClickFunnels and have a funnel for like either I'm trying to book calls or I'm trying to get my email or whatever. So we ended up turning that initial 10K investment into over like 100 and some thousand in the first like 6 months, and then became like digital
Wow.
nomad, traveling. So after we made that money, it was during COVID, we moved. I wasn't ever really around like other entrepreneurs. So this whole time in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I really want to be around other entrepreneurs. Like I know people from inside of the groups. And we had went to the US earlier this summer for an event where we were doing. And then we went to London, and then I live in Budapest, Hungary. So we went to London and then here. So when I was in London, there's this guy, I should know how to pronounce his name, but it's Jason. He's on the team at ClickFunnels. And he took us out to eat. And then I didn't know he worked for ClickFunnels at the time. And then he was telling me, I work for
Oh,
ClickFunnels. And he's like,
Jason,
you
the
should go to
comedies.
the,
He's the funnel Jedi.
yes, yes, yes. Yes. The funnel Jedi. I always forget how to properly pronounce the last name. But yeah, so he was like, we went out to dinner, and then he was like, yo, what you're doing is really cool. You should go to Funnel Hacking Live. It's like a really good experience. So at that point, I was like not even gonna go, but that really convinced me. So then I was like, I go home, and I'm like, all right, I gotta like save up the money and get the flights like to go. So then I'm at the event, and there's a couple of things that changed my mind, but really like I knew from people that had already been there, like, okay, they're going to do a pitch at the end. And I think sometimes people have this feeling that like they're just trying to pitch to sell me something rather than they're trying to pitch to help me with something. You know, if that makes sense. So I think sometimes
Totally.
people are like, oh, they're trying to be marketers and just sell me something versus no, they have information and they want to help you.
It's actually
And
for you. Yeah.
yeah. So like when I actually met Dan Henry for the first time there, and he was kind of challenging my mindset on that. Like, don't think like a poor person. Like poor person is like someone's always trying to sell something and get over on me, versus a rich person is like, is this an opportunity? And if so, like how can I take advantage of it? So I
Yes.
remember at the end, it was like that information mixed with like Myron Golden was just like, man, like I invested in this, and I remember I took a leap of faith. And I started thinking about all the times that I had taken that leap of faith, and I'm like, man, actually every single time like it pays off. So what if not joining this will save me some money, but I go back home and I'm doing the same thing and it takes me forever to get where I'm trying to go? Versus what if I join this, it's uncomfortable, maybe I can't make a payment, maybe something goes wrong, whoever knows, but maybe this is the key that I need to get to Comma Club or to make more money or to make whatever connections or whatever. Like, I don't know. So I'm like, I already know what the present looks like, but I don't know what the future looks like. But based on everyone else that said that they invested in this thing, that future looks better than what it is now. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of like how I that was at that point in time, I was like, I just, when I got that initial tug, I was like, either I can sit here, and Russell was always talking about like you have the resistance talking. I'm like, either I can sit here and just listen to that and come up with all these excuses why I can't do it, or look at my bank account, see if I have the money. If I have it, just go do it and worry about the rest later.
Wow. It's funny. I said that you were a man of faith, but you truly are in like every sense of the word, not just as a man of God, but somebody who really believes in seizing opportunities and overcoming those limiting beliefs, which I think is really cool because so much of what we do here, like we talk about tactics and frameworks and, how to grow your business and scale and be successful. But none of that stuff is even possible unless you can overcome that first obstacle, which is like believing in yourself, like seizing the opportunity,
Right.
saying like this is for me. I do have what it takes. Maybe I don't have all the money now, but like I will if I believe in myself. And that's
Right.
exactly what you did. And that's really cool. So can you tell me like a little bit about what it's been like being a part of 2CCX and how you're applying that to your own business?
Yeah, it's crazy. So I think like the first thing for, let's say, anybody that hasn't done it, that might even be considering it, is like the first thing that I thought was really cool is like you invest in it. Like if you're there at the event and they put you in this room. So my thought process is like, okay, it's going to be like me, maybe like, I don't know, 20 people, 40 people or something like that. You go into this room and there's like, I don't know, how many people would you say are like in that room? Like
It,
hundreds.
it's huge. Yeah, it's
Yeah, it
huge.
was like, I was like, oh, wow, this is crazy. So first I realized, okay, it's not, I think people have this feeling like you're investing to get information. And it's like, you're not investing to get information. You could just go on YouTube or whatever to get information. It's about two things, I think. It's about the transformation. So it's not just, because I'm like, everybody knows how to like lose weight and be sexy. Like you just eat less calories than what you're burning and you do the exercises, but it's harder said than done. So you need
Yeah.
someone that's going to take you from the information to actually doing it. And then the second thing I realized was like, it's the network. A lot of people join these programs, even if they don't necessarily need the information or the transformation, but it's getting around other people that can support you along the way and can say, hey, this is what worked for me. So I was like, man, there's a lot of people in here that know a lot more than me, that are a lot farther than me. So that really opened up my eyes to like, man, there's a lot of people that are doing amazing things and they use this to get there. So why am I trying to like do something different on my own and being afraid when like this is the right thing I should be doing? So then the next thing that I did, which that I always try to do, is I'm like, all right, investing in this thing doesn't get me any results. That does nothing for me. Like just, and I think some people are like, oh, I paid the money, but I didn't get the results. It's like, well,
Yes.
pay doesn't get you anything. You know what I mean? So like as soon as I got home that day, I started going through like the course, like posting in the group. I'm like, I'm gonna make the most out of this. So then I'm like even waiting for it to open up. So then when it opens up, I'm like going through all this stuff like as quick as I can, because I'm like, I gotta like make this payment. Like I did like a huge risk, you know, and then I'm gonna start shifting stuff around to the linchpin. I gotta like make a huge risk. But when I got in there, I was like, man, this is actually, before you decide to join, you don't really know everything that's in there. They're just telling you, hey, we're going to help you use the linchpin model to get your 2 Comma Club award. But when I got in there, I'm like, oh, wow. Like there's like, I don't even know, like 10, 15 sometimes calls a day or something crazy like that. So
Yeah.
I'm like, there's like a ton of support. If you need help, there's a ton of support. All the lessons are really in depth. You get like a workbook on like on how to do all this stuff. So it gave me like a lot of clarity on like, this is what I need to do in order to be successful with this model. And there's also a lot of support along the way in order to help implement that. But I also like something that Russell Brunson talks about, which is like, it's like you have to trust the process. And I think a lot of the times we have this like, it's not working mentality, but it's like no one would try to become like, you're not going to go from not knowing how to play the piano to being like an expert or Beethoven or Mozart in like 30 days. But like we'll join these programs and it's like, I joined 2CCX and I didn't get my 2 Comma Club in like 30 days. And it's like, yeah, you
You got to
gotta
put in
like,
the work.
yeah, you like put in the work, but also don't be paying attention to all these other people, because it's not that they're right or that they're wrong. It's that everyone has different methods. So if you're gonna do this one, you have to like be all in. So that was pretty much like my mindset of like, I have to go crazy with this, I have to go all in with this. And we ended up, you know, getting our like the MIFKI and our new, basically like our new membership up and running within like 30 days. I had like 70 people like join in there, like in that short amount of time. And then from there, which is what we were talking about, I realized a lot of people were like, the stuff that you talk about with the mindset and having the faith is like really what helps us like the most. And so then I was kind of put in the shoes of other people. So for me, I'm like, all right, I have this idea. I feel like God is telling me like, okay, your main strength is helping people with fear and overcoming their limiting beliefs and their doubt. But now you're in this situation. You invested in 2CCX, you got some results in 30 days. You have to make these payments, but now you have a what could potentially be a life-changing idea. So what do? Do you stay with what's comfortable and keep teaching people YouTube because this might not work and you got to restart? Or do I do what I'm telling other people to do and say, yeah, it's scary, it's a crazy idea, it could be stupid from the outside looking in, but I just got to like, you know, realize that this is probably the best decision. So I just have to take a leap of faith and hope that this would work. So
Yeah.
basically, after having that success, like started again with the new program that we're doing, which is like called Extreme Faith, which is like helping people achieve their big goals without letting fear set back. And like now I'm pretty much at zero, like, and having to build this up, but also being able to maybe be in a position to show other people. Because I know people that were at that event and it's like, really just like excuses of like and it's not something of like you need to join ClickFunnels or you need to join 2CCX, but it's like, why are you living this life like not actually living? Like you're just afraid
Yeah.
to do. And
Yeah.
then we get all emotional and start crying when people are on stage. It's like, oh, I want to be this person, or I like their speech, or I want to have this award, or I want to do this, but they're not taking the action and just living in this life of just like, oh, I could never do this, or why is this going to work? And it's just always thinking about the worst case scenario. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And actually
just
making it a
even
reality.
in the 2 months I've been at 2CCX, it's just been a whole crazy ride of like getting clarity, getting progress, but then also now it's like I have this new idea and it's like, you know,
Well, and
we'll
I
see
love
how
that
it plays out.
it, it takes definitely a certain level of bravery, and the things that you are talking about and trying to help others with, you kind of put yourself in that hot seat too of like, what do I need to do to get past
Yeah.
this? And sometimes it's really scary and it is a big risk to let go of everything that you've done so that you can actually do something completely brand new because you know that it's the right thing, it's the next thing. And you're kind of depriving the world of things that you have in your mind and in your heart if you don't follow through with it or go for it, right? Like there are people, like you mentioned, working those 9 to 5 jobs or part-time work, and they're just slaving away for a factory or something, but they have amazing ideas. And we don't get to see that in the world unless they actually decide to like make a change.
Yeah, and I think also you got to think about the way I think about it is like I'm not just like paying some random dude that came on the street and is like, "Hey, can help you with your business?" It's like you have Russell Brunson, which is like everyone pretty much on the online space has pretty much said they've worked with him in some capacity.
Yeah.
So it's not just like some random one-off program with someone that no one knows. So I'm like, okay, is he smarter than me? And would I learn at least one thing from him that would help me like grow my business? That's the first thing I was thinking about. And the second thing, I'm like, what's the worst case scenario? I think like for me, I've been traveling around like the world in these different countries, and my wife just got back from India. So I'm like, in a lot of these countries, like they don't even have like proper like some of the places she was staying, like they didn't have like toilets. And I think in the US, like people they get in this like fear and scarcity mindset when it's like there's really no worst case scenario. It's like, okay, you go to do 2CCX, you can't make a payment or something like that, or it doesn't work. What's the worst case scenario? Like you gotta go back to a job for a couple months to save back up, or you gotta like move back in with your parents, or you gotta, God forbid, sell your Tesla or sell like your 2-story
Yeah.
house that you barely use all the rooms in. So it's like it's not really much to be afraid of. So that's what I mean. To be living in a life where you're just settling for average when you have these tools, you're not even trying to use them, doesn't really make sense, because it's not like, hey, I'm going to be in extreme poverty and not be able to eat or do anything else. It's really just like a lot of ego and a lot of doubting that doesn't really need to happen. So I just started looking at the success stories and saying like, okay, if these people did it, I could do it. I don't even need to see a whole bunch of them. Like, just show me one. If one person did it, it's possible. So why, if they can do it, why wouldn't I be able to do it?
I love that. I love your perspective on that and your ability to just take what is given out there and start to apply it. Because, like you mentioned, so many people just receive that information and then they don't act on it or do something with it. And you're not only acting on it, but trying to teach others. Like, all it takes is for you to believe in yourself and do it.
All
So,
right.
I think that that's so cool. And you've had so much great advice already. But if you were to meet a fellow entrepreneur who maybe was thinking about 2CCX or going to Funnel Hacking Live or something, what piece of advice would you give them?
That is a good question. So I guess the piece of advice that has helped me is like being on the other side, right? So I've done huge leaps of faith where now it's paid off huge. And the thing that makes me sick, nervous, I don't know how I would word it, is like thinking like, dang, where would my life be if I wouldn't have done that thing? Like even with 2CCX, I guess that's a good question. So like right now I'm like, man, if I wouldn't have went to Funnel Hacking Live and I wouldn't have joined 2CCX, I would have came back home and I would have just kept doing like the high ticket thing where it's like, okay, let's get on calls, let's do this. Not to say that that doesn't work, but it's like I wouldn't have known about the continuity and building like a membership, and I wouldn't have came up with the idea to do the YouTube membership. And if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have gotten invited to do this summit. And if I wouldn't have got invited to do the summit, I wouldn't have came up with this idea. Like basically when I did the summit, they're like, hey, you have a bigger purpose than just a YouTube. You should like consider doing something for a bigger like audience, which then I went on a walk and I came up with that idea. So I wouldn't have went to Funnel Hacking Live and joined 2CX and done all that. Then I wouldn't have got the idea to even come up with this new thing that I'm doing. And who knows like where that's going to take like my life. And if I wouldn't have done all that, like me and you wouldn't be speaking. And maybe there's, I don't know, maybe there's not millions or thousands, hundreds of thousands or thousands or hundreds, but maybe there's 3 people in the world or 2 people or 1 person that needs to hear this. So they're the person that goes on and changes the world. They become the next Russell Brunson or Tony Robbins. Maybe it's just for that one person. But it's like when I'm sitting on the plane, there's no way I'm going to like, okay, as soon as I go, I'm going to hear this message. I'm going to invest in this thing. And if I invest in this thing, this person will invite me to this event and blah, blah, blah. Like you can't even imagine in your mind, like what will happen. But what you can imagine is like where you're at currently. So if where you're at currently is not fulfilling you and you're not happy with where you want to be, and if you can just keep doing the same things and you're probably going to get the same results and you want to have a change, it's like they're telling you this is the change that you're going to get. And if that change is better than where you're at now, then the only difference is like making that leap from where you're at to here. And the only reason you wouldn't do that is if you don't want to do that change, or if you're just doubting that you can get there, right? Now, if you just have negative $1 million in your bank account, it's like impossible to do it. that can make sense. But if it's possible, but you're just afraid to do it, that's where I would just challenge people to like, you have to have a different mindset, because like, you don't know what, like, you cannot imagine like how it could change your life. Like, I can't tell you like, hey, it's going to do this thing, or it's going to do that thing. Like, it takes you on a wild journey. And I feel like 100, if not 99.99% of the time, it ends up better than you thought. Like, the worst case scenario almost never happens, but it almost is always better than what you expect. Like, I'm never thinking like, hey, me and you are gonna like have a conversation and I'm gonna get invited on this podcast if I join, but who knows like where this will go. Who knows? Like, that's what I mean. So I think a lot of the times we're conditioned to just think of the worst case scenario, like, well, what if it doesn't work out? Or what if I join and my membership doesn't get filled out? But it's like, well, what if it does though? What if you join and all of that stuff works out and it works out better? So I think if people have that mindset, they'll look back a year from now, probably not even that long, and be like, man, I'm so thankful I did that. And I don't even want to think about what if I didn't do that, because joining changed my entire life. You know, I mean, especially, I didn't even know when I joined, but you have every year they do like is it called like the Weekend in Paradise? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Mastermind in Paradise. Yeah.
Well, I'm like, you're meeting other people in person. So you can't tell me that if you do that, like that would, like, there's just so many ways that it'll change your life, that I've found that every time I invest in myself in this way, and it feels scary, it always pays off, like every single time. And then you look back and you're like, man, I'm so glad I did that. And then everyone else is like, how'd you get to where you are? How'd you do that? And then you tell them, and then like, oh, but I could never do that because blah, 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 blah. It's like, if you just remove all those excuses and you just go for it, it's like, what, like, there's really no worst case scenario. Like, there's only like a best case.
It's funny. It's quite simple, but as humans, it's like in our nature to overcomplicate it. And for some reason, automatically go to the negative. So it's refreshing to think like just saying yes and doing something about it will set you on the trajectory to actually progress and move forward. Because if you don't do it, you'll never know.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, I think as kids, like our parents in society is always telling us to like, be careful, like, don't do this, don't do that, like this could fail. And then also online, you have a lot of scammers. So I get that too. And I think people aren't honest about that. So there's a lot of people online that have BS programs that are not good. But I think there's ways to overcome that. One, you just got to think of like all the stuff that your family is telling you and people are telling you, like, what type of lives are they living? Most of them are living these simple, basic, mediocre, average lives. Like, do you want that? If you don't want that, don't listen to them. All right. Next thing is like, is this a scam? Is this something that can help you? You can easily do your research on Russell Brunson and how many people he's helped. Like, look at all the top people online in the space and look at the feedback that they give on Russell, right? So then it's like, if you work with him, will you learn more than where you're at now? It's just kind of like if Michael Jordan or LeBron James had like a basketball program, like there's no way you're not going to learn more by getting in there. And like, you know, that's why you guys do stuff like this for people to know. So it really, I think, just comes down to like, if you feel like that's the next best step, like you just have to like go for it and see.
I love that. Yeah. And you are truly somebody who is walking the walk. It's great to see that. Where can people go to learn more about you or your business or anything that you're doing online?
The best place would be like Instagram or YouTube, which is like Dee Greene. So D-E-E, so D with two E's, and then green like the color with the E at the end. So Greene.
Awesome. Well, it was great to have you here. I love that you talked about mindset and positivity and saying yes to yourself. And you got me feeling like all kinds of things. And I feel like the inspiration that you set just in this interview, but like for people who are listening, this is something where like they're going to want to see you on stage sometime at FHL. So I am like, I hope to like manifest that for you, because I believe that you are a truly impactful and positive individual. And I hope more people can learn from you and all the things that you've talked to us about mindset and believing in yourself. And I think you are an incredible coach. Just from this conversation, I can just sense a lot of great things from you. So I wish you all the best. Thanks so much for this conversation. I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dee.